Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and pull out the crucial insights, making you seriously well-informed without the information overload.
And today, this deep dive is tailored specifically for you, the learner.
Exactly. You want to grasp new knowledge quickly, get those aha moments, and definitely avoid feeling swamped.
Our focus today, it's sharp. We're exploring Chapter 11 of the VA pamphlet, 26-7, Revised. That's the one all about appraisal reports.
Right. So our mission is to unpack what really makes a VA appraisal tick.
Yeah, maybe reveal some surprising bits and just clarify the core of these, well, pretty important documents.
Okay, let's dive in. Forget the dense jargon. We want the essentials. So maybe starting at the beginning, what fundamentally is a VA appraisal report?
Well, at its heart, it's this detailed assessment of a property's value. And it's done by an appraiser who's specifically assigned by the VA.
Okay, so not just any appraiser.
No, they're on a VA panel.
Yeah.
And it's more than just, one person's opinion. These reports have to stick to some very strict guidelines. Think of it like a framework.
A framework to keep things consistent and reliable?
Exactly. They have to follow US PEEP. That's the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. It's kind of the gold standard across the US for appraisals.
USPP, okay. I've heard of that.
But then, on top of that, the VA has its own specific requirements. Those are laid out in this handbook we're looking at, and in other updates they send out.
So layers of rules then.
You got it. It's all about building trust and reliability in that value estimate.
Makes sense, especially for something as big as a home loan for a veteran. It's a robust system.
Precisely.
Right.
And it means lenders working with VA loans. They can be confident that these VA fee panel appraisers know the drill. They understand the VA specifics.
So it smooths things out for the lenders. They don't have to second guess if the appraiser knows the VA way.
Right. You don't need to keep asking for extra confirmations or anything.
But what about the lenders themselves? Do they have a role in checking these appraisals?
Oh, definitely. Lenders have folks called staff appraisal reviewers, or SARs. Their job is to review these reports.
SARs.
So they also need a really good handle on appraisal principles generally and all the specific VA requirements we're talking about. It's like a double check system.
Okay, so checks and balances. What's the ultimate goal here? Why all this rigor?
It really boils down to the quality of that appraisal. It's absolutely key. It's there to protect everyone involved.
Everyone, meaning?
The veteran, using their benefit, obviously, but also the lender, putting up the money, the company servicing the loan later on, and, the VA itself, since they're guaranteeing the loan.
Right, it protects the whole chain, responsible lending.
That's the core idea. And because of that, these reports are serious business. They can't just, fudge the numbers.
I would hope not.
No, the handbook is really clear. An appraisal is unacceptable if the analysis isn't solid or if it looks like the appraiser just worked backwards to meet the sales price.
So no hitting the number. That's a major no-no.
Exactly. That's a huge red flag.
Okay, good. So it needs to be a genuine, unbiased value. Speaking of value, the term market value comes up a lot. How does the VA actually define that?
Their definition is pretty much the industry standard. They say market value is the most probable price a property should sell for.
Most probable price. Okay.
Yeah, in a competitive open market,
Yeah.
With all the conditions needed for a fair sale, like buyers and sellers who know what they're doing, acting prudently, no one under pressure.
So normal market conditions, informed parties, no funny business.
Pretty much. No undue stimulus, as they put it. It's about what's likely under fair, typical circumstances.
And the handbook says reasonable value and market value are the same for VA.
That's right, yeah. For VA appraisals, you can use those terms interchangeably.
And this definition lines up with others.
It does. The handbook points out it aligns with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the main appraisal organizations. So it's a widely accepted standard.
Okay, so we have this solid foundation of what market value means. Now let's get practical. If you actually open up one of these VA appraisal reports, what are the key things you'd find inside? The essential bits.
Right, there are several core parts. First, you've got the required forms.
Forms, plural?
Yeah, depending on the property and the situation, like is a standard purchase.
Right.
Or maybe a foreclosure, what they call a liquidation.
Mm-hmm.
There are specific Fannie Mae forms for each.
Okay, like what?
Well, you've got the 1004, that's your standard single-family home appraisal. The 2055, that's sometimes used for foreclosures if they can't get inside, exterior only.
Uh-huh.
Then the 1004C for manufactured homes, 2073 for individual condos, 2075 for exterior only condo foreclosures,
Mm-hmm.
2025 for small 2 to 4 unit income properties.
Wow, lots of numbers.
And even a standard vacant land form if it's a foreclosure and only the land has value. So you see, it's tailored.
Tailored to the property type and the situation. That makes sense for getting the right info. What else is a must-have?
Okay, really important. The lender's name and Department of Veterans Affairs must be right there in the lender-client field on the form. Clear as day.
Accountability.
Exactly. And the appraiser has to sign it, obviously, but also put their VA-assigned ID number in the other block, right next to their state license info.
Okay, clear ID for everyone. What about showing the property itself, visually?
Yep. A street map is essential. It needs to show the property being appraised, the subject, and all the comparable sales the appraiser used.
The comps, right.
And if those comps are pretty far away, maybe in a rural area, they might need extra maps just to give context.
Makes sense. What about a sketch of the building?
Yeah, the building sketch, that's key. It needs to show how they calculated the gross living area, or GLA. We should definitely dig into GLA later.
Okay, GLA calculation. What else on the sketch?
It needs the outside dimensions of the main house, any basement shown in relation to the main floor, and any other bits like detached garages that add value.
Do they need detailed room measurements inside?
Interestingly, no, not usually required. Just the overall footprint and how the basement fits in. The exception is, again, those liquidation appraisals where they couldn't get inside, then no sketch is needed at all.
Okay, focus on the outside dimensions and the main living space size. What about photos? Pictures tell a story, right?
Oh, absolutely vital. Clear, labeled photos. You need the front and back, ideally all sides if possible.
Front and back, got it.
Any additions or improvements that add value, those need pics. Also, anything that needs fixing to meet VA standards, the minimum property requirements, or MPRs.
MPRs, okay, photos of repair items.
A street scene photo, too, to show the neighborhood context. And if there's a great view, or maybe a not-so-great view, that could affect value. That needs a photo.
Makes sense. Capture the surroundings. What about inside the house?
Yep, interior photos are required. Definitely the kitchen, the main living area, and all the bathrooms.
Kitchen, living area, bathrooms, standard stuff.
And if there have been recent updates or renovations, you want photos of those too. Plus, a front photo of each comparable sale they used.
Photos of the comps, too.
Yeah. Though sometimes they can use the real estate listing photos. If those show the condition better at the time of sale, or if it's, say, in a gated community they couldn't easily access, there are exceptions.
Okay.
And for condos, if the subject and the comps are in the same building or identical ones, they might just provide comments instead of photos of the comps.
Practical exception.
Right. But remember, no interior photos are needed for those liquidation appraisals if they couldn't get access. It's about balancing detail with practicality.
So, good visuals, inside and out when possible. What other key pieces of info are in these reports?
A detailed repair list is crucial. It lists anything needed to meet those MPRs we mentioned.
Minimum property requirements.
Right. Or, for new construction, any specific customer preference items requested. Sometimes this list is right on the appraisal form itself.
Okay, a clear list of what needs doing.
Then there's something called the Uniform Appraisal Dataset, or UAD.
UAD sounds important. What's that about?
It's all about improving data quality and consistency. It standardizes how appraisers enter information.
Standardizes how?
It gives specific formats, acceptable values for certain fields, standard abbreviations, and really importantly, specific ratings and definitions for the property's condition and quality and any recent remodeling.
Condition and quality ratings.
Okay, now interestingly, while the UAD system might technically allow using pending sales as comps, VA says only closed sales are required.
Ah, VA-specific rule there, closed sales only.
Yep. And the UAD also requires info on remodeling done in the last 15 years, which VA expects appraisers to spot and consider.
15 years, okay.
Oh, and those UAD condition ratings, C5 and C6, which mean pretty rough shape, those generally aren't appropriate for a standard purchase appraisal, because those are usually done assuming necessary repairs will be made.
Got it. So UAD helps keep the data consistent and detailed. What else?
The appraiser's own certifications need to be in there. Anything required by state law, continuing education, professional groups they belong to.
Other credentials.
Exactly. And one last thing specifically for those foreclosure or liquidation appraisals, there's a required liquidation appraisal addendum. It has extra details just for those situations.
Okay, a comprehensive package. You mentioned gross living area, GLA, a couple of times. Seems fundamental. How does VA define what counts as GLA?
Right, GLA. It's very precise. It's the total square footage of finished, habitable residential space that's above ground level, and it has to be contiguous all connected inside.
Finished, livable, connected, and above ground. Measured how?
From the outside surfaces of the exterior wall. So basically the living space on the main and upper floors you can walk through without going outside.
Okay. What about, say, a finished room over a detached garage? You have to go outside to get to it.
Good question. That would not be included in the GLA because it's not contiguous.
But it still has value, right?
Oh, definitely. The appraiser has to assess its usefulness and value contribution separately in the market comparison grid. It's just not part of that main GLA number.
Okay. What about basements? Lots of finished basements out there.
The basement question. VA is crystal clear on this. Finished or unfinished, basements do not count in GLA. They're considered below grade.
Full stop. No basement GLA. What about finished attics?
Attics can be included in GLA, provided they meet the criteria. Finished, habitable, and directly accessible from the main living area, like a walk-up finished attic space.
Okay, attics maybe, basements never. What about those tricky areas that are partially below ground, like in a split level or walkout basement?
Yeah, that gets nuanced. It really comes down to how the market perceives that space. If a below-grade area is very similar to the above-grade GLA in terms of finish, quality, how it's used, and importantly, if buyers in that specific market treat it as equivalent living space, then the appraiser might be able to include it in the GLA.
So it depends on local market acceptance.
Exactly. But if the market generally sees it as basement space, even if it's nicely finished, then it stays out of the GLA, gets valued separately in the comparison grid. It's all about function and market perception.
Market perception is key there. Okay, what about room additions? Or people converting garages or carports into living space? How's that handled for GLA?
Those can be included in GLA, but only if they meet certain conditions.
Gotchas.
1, they have to be accessible from inside the main house. Can't have to go outside. 2, they need a permanent, adequate heat source. And 3, the design, quality, and general feel should be similar to the original house. It needs to feel like a proper part of the home.
So integrated, heated, accessible from inside. What if an addition or conversion doesn't meet all those? Like a poorly done garage conversion?
And then it cannot be included in the GLA. It has to be valued separately. And the appraiser really needs to think about how that kind of inferior space might drag down the overall desirability and value of the property. They factor that into the adjustments.
Right, quality matters, not just square footage. Okay, shifting slightly, let's talk accessory dwelling units, ADUs. They seem to be popping up more. How does VA view those?
Okay, ADUs. The VA defines them as a separate living unit. It has its own kitchen, sleeping area, bathroom. It can be attached to the main house inside it, or even detached on the same property like a little cottage or unit over the garage.
But it's all considered one property.
Yes, the key is that the main house and the ADU form a single piece of real estate.
How does that affect the appraisal?
The appraiser first has to do what's called a highest and best use analysis. They need to figure out, is this mainly a single-family home that happens to have an ADU? Or does it really function more like a two-family dwelling?
Why does that distinction matter so much?
Because if it's essentially a two-family property, it needs a different appraisal form that Fannie Mae 10025 for income properties.
Yeah.
And of course, the use has to be legal according to local zoning.
Zoning is always a factor. Okay, what about the GLA calculation with an ADU? Does the ADU space get added in?
No, absolutely not. This is crucial. The living area of the ADU is never included in the GLA of the main house.
So it's valued completely separately?
Completely separately. It gets its own line item and value contribution in the market comparison grid. Think of it like valuing two distinct living spaces on one property.
What if there's more than one ADU, like two separate units?
If the appraiser finds more than one ADU, they have to notify the lender. That would probably trigger a much closer look at the property's legality and classification.
Okay. And what about other detached buildings? Like a workshop or a big shed that doesn't have full living facilities?
If it doesn't have a kitchen, sleeping area, and bathroom, and it can't legally be used as a dwelling, it might just be valued as storage or workshop space, assuming it's safe and structurally sound.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about things outside the property that might affect it. The handbook uses the term nuisances. What does that cover?
Nuisances are those undesirable external factors. Think heavy traffic noise, weird smells from a nearby factory, being right next to a busy highway, that kind of thing.
Do nuisances automatically disqualify a property for a VA loan?
No, not automatically. It doesn't necessarily mean it fails MPRs or needs repairs. But the appraiser must describe any nuisances they observe and, really importantly, consider how that nuisance impacts the property's market value.
How do they figure out the impact on value?
Well, the ideal way is to find comparable sales, those comps we talked about, that are affected by the same or very similar nuisance.
Compare like with like again.
Exactly. If you can find sales of other houses near that noisy road, it gives you a direct market indicator of how much buyers are penalizing that location.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, another term in the handbook. Remaining economic life. What is that exactly?
Remaining economic life.
Yeah.
It's the appraiser's estimate of how many more years the actual improvements, the house, the garage, etc., are likely to continue being useful as a home.
So the lifespan left in the buildings, not the land.
Correct. How long until they're basically worn out or functionally obsolete?
How on earth do they estimate that? Seems like gazing into a crystal ball.
It does feel a bit like that. But it's based on evaluating several factors. Things like how stable the neighborhood is, how this property compares to others nearby, the demand for this type of house, the quality of the original design and construction.
The current condition, how well it's been maintained.
Exactly. Maintenance is huge.
Yeah.
And even things like local code enforcement play a role. It's a holistic look.
Okay, a big picture assessment. Is there a specific number of years that triggers extra attention?
Yes. The appraiser has to give a single number estimate, like 45 years. And if that number is less than 30 years, they're required to provide detailed comments explaining why.
Less than 30 years. Why 30? Is that tied to loan terms?
That's the general thinking, yeah. A typical mortgage is often 30 years, so if the house's estimated useful life is shorter than that, it raises questions about whether it's adequate security for the loan over the long haul.
Where does this number show up in the report?
It's reported in the cost approach section, though for condos, it goes in the reconciliation section at the end.
Okay. Now, related to that is effective age. How's that different from just the actual age?
Actual age is just simple chronology built in 1980. It's 40-something years old.
Yeah.
Effective age reflects its current condition and utility.
So a really well-kept, updated older house could have a younger effective age.
Precisely. Major remodeling can significantly lower the effective age. On the flip side, a neglected house might have an effective age much older than its actual years. It's about how old it seems based on its condition.
And like remaining economic life, do they need to comment if it's way different from the actual age?
Yes, they state the effective age as a single number and have to explain if it differs significantly from the actual chronological age. It helps justify the condition assessment.
And for VA purchase loans, since they're often appraised subject to repairs.
Right. The effective age should reflect the condition after those required MPR repairs are completed. They're looking at its condition once it meets VA standards.
Got it. Let's circle back quickly to highest and best use. We touched on it with ADUs. Can you unpack that principle a bit more?
Sure. Highest and best use is fundamental in appraisal. It means figuring out the most probable use of the property that is physically possible, legally allowed, financially feasible, and results in the highest value.
So the optimal use, considering all angles.
Exactly. What makes the most economic sense for that piece of real estate? However, and this is a big however for VA.
The VA angle.
Right. While the appraiser determines this highest and best use, the appraisal itself must follow VA guidelines. Since VA loans are only for residential purposes, the appraiser cannot give any value to potential commercial uses or farm income or future development potential.
Even if, technically, turning it into a shop might be its highest value use in a pure market sense.
Correct. The VA appraisal value must reflect its use as a residence only. VA's purpose overrides a purely market-driven highest and best use if that use isn't residential.
That's a critical distinction. What about properties that are residential but also have other aspects, like a farm residence? You mentioned VA doesn't do farm loans, but can a vet buy a house on farmland?
Yes. They absolutely can use their VA home loan benefit for a property that includes a farm residence, even though VA doesn't make loans for farming operations.
Is there an acreage limit then?
Surprisingly, no. VA doesn't set a limit on the acreage. The key is whether the property's primary use is residential and if there are comparable sales of similar large acreage residential properties in the area.
So the focus stays on the house as a home. What about things like barns, silos, stables on that kind of property? Are they valued?
Yes, but only based on how much they contribute to the residential market value.
Meaning, how much would a typical home buyer pay extra for that barn, not what a farmer would pay?
Exactly. No value is given for its potential use in farming, or for any livestock, crops, or farm equipment. It's all about its appeal and value within the residential market context.
Okay, clear focus on residential value. Now, let's switch to a property type with lots of specific rules. Condominiums. What's the absolute number one thing to know about VA condo appraisals?
The absolute biggest thing. The entire condominium development must be approved by the VA before a loan can be guaranteed. This includes site condos, manufactured home condos, everything.
The whole project needs VA's okay first.
Yes. If an appraiser sends a report for a unit in a non-VA approved project to the lender's SAR, that SAR cannot issue the notice of value, the NOV. It's a hard stop.
So you have to check the project's VA status before even ordering the appraisal.
That's the strong recommendation, yes.
Yeah.
Verify VA acceptance first to avoid wasting time and money on an appraisal for an ineligible property.
Smart move. Are any condo types just flat out ineligible?
Yep, a couple. Condo hotels where units are in a rental pool, not eligible. And those air condos that don't have an actual homeowners association, also ineligible. They don't fit the VA model.
Okay. Does VA piggyback on approvals from, say, FHA or HUD anymore?
No, they used to, but not anymore. VA requirements are different, so they don't accept FHA HUD approvals now. And they also don't do spot approvals for just one unit if the whole project isn't VA accepted.
So each project needs its own VA review. Is there an easy way to check if a condo development is approved?
Yes, thankfully. The VA keeps an online list of accepted condo projects. You can search it on their website under condo reports. It'll show the status, any conditions, and the VA ID number for the project.
That's super helpful. What if it's not on the list? How does a lender get a project approved?
It's a process. The lender has to start a case in the VA system, WebLGY, and upload a whole bunch of documents in PDF format.
Like what kind of documents?
The declaration, the bylaws, any amendments, the plat map, rules and regs, recent meeting minutes, the budget, letters about special assessments or litigation. It's a pretty hefty package.
Sounds like it. What happens then?
Once it's all uploaded, the VA Regional Loan Center, the RLC, gets their legal counsel to review everything.
Yeah.
Then the RLC lets the lender know the outcome and updates the project status in the system. It's a legal checkup, essentially.
Okay, a thorough legal review. Now, assuming the project is approved, what about appraising an individual unit within it? Any specifics there?
Yes. Usually they'll use Fannie Mae Form 1073 for a standard condo unit.
Yeah.
Or the 1004C for a manufactured home condo, and the 1075 if it's a foreclosure they couldn't access.
Got it. What does the appraiser need to focus on regarding the condo association itself?
They need to report which utilities are covered by the HOA fee. They also have to give their opinion on whether the monthly fee seems adequate, looking at the budget and comparing it to similar projects.
And if they think the fee is too low?
They should recommend what a more appropriate fee would be. They also absolutely have to report any pending litigation involving the HOA or the development. That could be a big risk factor.
HOA fees and litigation, definitely key things for a buyer. What about brand new condo projects? Anything special there?
Yeah, for new developments, VA typically has a 70% pre-sale requirement.
Meaning 70% of the units need to be sold or under contract.
Exactly. Before VA will guarantee loans in that project. It ensures the project is financially viable. That requirement will be stated right on the NOV.
A safeguard for new projects. Okay, one last condo question. Wood-destroying insects. Termite reports. Always needed for condos.
Not always. For units stacked vertically in low-rise or high-rise buildings, generally no, unless the appraiser sees signs of trouble.
But what about townhouse style or site condos?
For those side-by-side units, if they're in areas with moderate to heavy or very heavy termite risk, then yes, an inspection is required on the NOV. The exception is if the HOA can prove they have a current treatment contract covering the whole structure. So it depends on the condo style and location risk.
Style and location risk. Got it. Okay, let's shift to the real meat of most appraisals. The sales comparison approach. What are the key rules here for VA?
Right, the sales comparison approach. This is usually the main event. The appraiser needs a minimum of 3 closed sales. These should be the best available comps.
Best available meaning?
Meaning most similar in location and physical characteristics. Size, age, condition, features. Not just picked because the price was close. Ideally, recent sales from the same subdivision or condo project are best. They should be properties that would genuinely compete with the subject if they were all for sale at the same time.
True competition. What if the comps aren't perfect matches? There are always differences.
Exactly. The appraiser makes adjustments to the sale prices of the comps to account for those differences. Bigger house, newer kitchen, better location, whatever it is.
And they need to explain those adjustments.
Yes, especially if an adjustment isn't obvious or if it's a particularly large dollar amount. Clear explanations are key to supporting their reasoning.
What if it's hard to find good recent comps nearby, maybe a unique property or a slow market?
If data is scarce, the appraiser uses the best they can find. But then they really need to provide detailed comments explaining the market, why data is limited, and how the subject differs from the comps they did manage to use. They need to paint a clear picture.
No strict distance limits then? Like comps have to be within a mile?
No, VA doesn't set hard distance limits. Especially in suburban or rural areas, the best comps might be several miles away. The appraiser just needs to explain why they chose those specific sales.
Okay. Can they use foreclosures, REOs, or short sales as comps?
Yes, REO sales and short sales can be used if those types of sales are common in that specific market. But a property just being transferred back to the bank in foreclosure, that's not an open market sale, so that cannot be used as a comp.
Makes sense. What about appraising in a brand new subdivision where there aren't many resales yet?
Good question. In that case, the appraiser should try to include sales from competing builders in the area, as well as any actual closed sales within the subject's own development, if any exist yet. Compare new to new.
When they make those dollar adjustments for differences, how do they get those numbers? Is it just the cost of adding a feature?
No, that's a common misconception. Adjustments must be market-derived. It's not about the cost to install a pool. It's about how much more a typical buyer in that market would likely pay for a house with a pool versus one without. It's about market reaction.
Market reaction, not cost.
Yeah.
Okay. What about sales concessions? Like if a seller paid the buyer's closing costs?
Right, concessions. If a comparable sale included concessions like seller-paid closing costs or maybe furniture was included, the appraiser needs to adjust the comp's sale price downward.
Downward. Why?
To reflect what the property likely would have sold for without those concessions under typical market conditions. It makes the comp more comparable to a standard deal. You can't adjust upward for concessions.
Okay, adjust down for concessions on the comps. How recent do the comps need to be?
The fresher the better. Ideally within the last 6 months. Generally, they shouldn't be more than 12 months old unless the appraiser provides a really solid explanation for going back further.
And what if the market itself has changed since the comp sold? Prices going up or down?
That requires a market condition adjustment, sometimes called a time adjustment. The appraiser looks at trends. Are prices rising or falling? Are homes selling quickly or sitting longer? They need to comment on these trends to support any time adjustment they make. Positive adjustment if the market's gone up since the comp sold, negative if it's gone down.
Reflecting the current reality. One last thing on comps. When they compare the subject property's condition, especially if it needs MPR repairs.
Right. Since the VA appraisal for a purchase is usually subject to repairs, the condition rating used for the subject property in that comparison grid should reflect its expected condition after those required repairs are done. They're valuing it as if it already meets VA standards.
Valuing the after repair condition. Makes sense. Okay, let's touch on the other valuation approaches. What about the cost approach? Is that a big deal for VA?
Surprisingly, no. The cost approach, where you estimate the cost to build it new, subtract depreciation, and add land value, is not required by VA.
Really? Not required at all?
Nope. An appraiser can include it if they want, maybe as extra support for their value conclusion from the sales comparison approach, but it's purely optional.
If they do choose to include it, any specific rules?
Yes. If they complete the cost approach, they must also provide a separate estimate for the site value, the land value. They can get us from land sales or techniques called allocation or extraction.
And if they don't do the cost approach?
Then they're not allowed to just stick a site value estimate in the report. No cost approach means no separate site value. They're linked.
Okay, cost approach optional, linked to site value if used. What about the income approach? Valuing based on rental potential.
The income approach is required only if the property is a 2 to 4 unit residential income property.
Like a duplex or fourplex.
Exactly. For those, the appraiser must use the income approach and complete the appraisal on that specific Fannie Mae Form 25 we mentioned earlier. But for regular single-family homes or even condos, the income approach is not required by VA.
Only for those small, multi-unit properties. So after looking at sales comparison, maybe cost, maybe income, how do they arrive at the final value number?
That happens in the final reconciliation section. The appraiser sums up the approaches they used and explains how they weighted them. But for VA, since cost is optional and income is limited, the sales comparison approach almost always carries the most weight. Often, it's the only approach fully developed and relied upon for the final value estimate.
So for most VA loans, it really comes down to those comparable sales. Now, the handbook mentions different appraisal conditions. What does that mean?
It basically describes the state of the property when appraised and what assumptions are being made. As is is one condition.
Meaning
the property already meets the VA's minimum property requirements right now as it sits, or it's used for liquidation appraisals, which are always as is.
what if it doesn't meet those MPRs? If it needs repairs?
Then the appraisal condition is subject to repairs. The value assumes those specific repairs will be completed satisfactorily. This is also used for new construction items or planned alterations.
And if the house isn't even built yet? Proposed construction?
That's subject to completion per plans and specifications. The value is based on the planned, finished product. So the condition reflects the basis of the valuation.
Got it. One more thing on conditions the handbook emphasizes recommending repairs, not inspections.
Yes, that's an important point. If an appraiser finds an MPR deficiency, like a leaky roof, they should recommend repair roof leak, not obtain roof inspection. They need to recommend the fix needed to meet VA standards, not just pass the buck for more investigation.
Recommend the solution, not just identify the problem. Okay. A handbook also talks about appraiser training. What's VA's stance?
VA definitely supports experienced appraisers, mentoring new ones. They recognize it's important for the profession. Trainees can go along on property visit.
Can trainees actually help write the report?
Yes, a trainee or another appraiser can assist with parts of the appraisal development. But, and this is crucial, the critical analysis has to be done by the VA-assigned appraiser who signs the report.
Critical analysis meaning?
Things like selecting the comparable sales, analyzing market trends, determining the adjustments, and reaching the final value conclusion. That responsibility stays with the assigned appraiser.
So collaboration is okay, but the final judgment rests with the official appraiser.
Exactly. And if anyone does assist, their name and specific contribution must be stated clearly in the report. Transparency is key. Only the VA-assigned appraiser signs.
Okay, transparency and responsibility. Now let's dig into those liquidation appraisals you mentioned. It sounds like they happen in specific, maybe difficult circumstances.
They do. A liquidation appraisal is typically ordered by the loan servicer when a VA loan goes into default and foreclosure is likely. It's usually requested about 30 days before the expected property sale date.
Part of the foreclosure process, then, is the timeline different for these?
Yes, it's faster. The standard turnaround time is just 5 business days. Time is usually critical in these default situations.
5 days, that's quick. Does the servicer help the appraiser get access? These situations can be tricky.
They're required to assist. If it's occupied, provide contact info for the occupant. If vacant, provide key location or access details. Facilitating access is part of their job.
What if the appraiser just can't get inside? Maybe the occupant refuses or it seems unsafe.
There are specific procedures for that. Interior access might be waived if the owner refuses, if it's unsafe, after multiple failed contact attempts, or sometimes due to local laws or specific RLC waivers.
So there are protocols. If they can't get inside for a liquidation appraisal, what do?
They have to make reasonable efforts to figure out the interior condition from other sources, maybe old listings, tax records, and they have to make reasonable assumptions about the condition and any repairs likely needed, both MPR and cosmetic. They document what they did and the assumptions made.
Making the best assessment possible from the outside. Any specific quirks for filling out the liquidation report form?
Yeah, a couple. Since there's no traditional borrower, they put NA in the borrower field. And crucially, the value is always as-is condition.
As is? But is it like a fire sale value?
No, that's important. It's still market value, the same definition as a standard appraisal. What it would likely sell for on the open market in its current condition, not a forced liquidation price.
Still market value, just based on its current state.
Right. And they must include that special liquidation appraisal addendum.
What's on that addendum?
Lots of specific detail. Occupied or vacant? Was interior access gained? If not, what attempts were made? If vacant, is it secure? Any urgent hazards, like an unsecured pool?
Okay, status and access details.
Plus, info on 3 current listings or pending sales nearby time on market, price, how they compare. And a really detailed, itemized list of all MPR and cosmetic repairs needed, with estimated costs for each item and the estimated value each repair would add.
Cost and contributory value for each repair.
Wow. Yeah. And the appraiser has to consider the total contributory value of those repairs when making their condition adjustments on the main grid, since the main valuation is as is. A very thorough look at the property's current state and potential.
Extremely detailed. Okay, another specialized type. Partial release appraisals. What's the scenario for these?
No. This happens when someone with a VA loan wants to sell off or release just a portion of the land that secures their loan, but keep the rest with the house.
Like selling off a backlot.
Exactly. The loan servicer requests this appraisal directly from the VA Regional Loan Center, the RLC, via email, not the usual WebLGY system.
And they need to provide specific info.
Oh yeah, servicer details, VA loan number, address, owner info, plot plans showing the before and after parcels, legal descriptions, the reason for the release, and confirmation the fee will be paid.
Is the appraisal fee standard for these?
No, it's not fixed.
Yeah.
VA figures it out case by case after talking to the appraiser about the complexity involved.
And VA assigns the appraiser directly.
Yes. The RLC assigns a VA panel appraiser outside of WebLGY and gives them all the details and instructions.
What exactly does the appraiser have to value in this partial release situation?
They need to provide two values: the market value of the entire property before the piece of land is released, and the market value of just the remaining portion after the release happens. It's a before and after picture.
Before and after values, how does the report get processed then?
The appraiser emails the report and invoice directly back to the RLC. The RLC reviews it and then sends the report, invoice, and a summary memo to the servicer, keeping copies internally. It's a more direct loop.
Okay, direct process for partial releases. Last specific type mentioned, vacant land appraisals, but only in the liquidation context.
Right. This might be needed for a liquidation appraisal if the property securing the defaulted loan is just land, or if any buildings on it are worthless, have no contributory value.
So when the land is basically all that's left of value.
Pretty much. The appraisal can be a narrative report or use a commercial vacant land form, but it still has to follow US PAP standards.
What needs to be in that vacant land report?
A lot of detail, even for just land. Address, legal description, owner, tax info, property rights, site size, zoning, highest and best use analysis, description of shape, topography, drainage, utilities available, flood zone info. If there are worthless structures, an estimated cost to tear them down might be needed if that affects value. A grid with at least 3 comparable land sales, adjusted to support the value. Plus the usual appraiser assumptions and certifications. It's a full appraisal, just focused solely on the land.
So even for vacant land in foreclosure, it's a very thorough valuation process. Whew! That was an incredibly deep dive into Chapter 11. We covered a ton of ground.
We really did. From the basics of what a VA appraisal is and that key concept of market value, all the way through GLA calculations, ADUs, nuisances, economic life, effective age, highest and best use.
Handling farm residences, the maze of condo rules, UAD, the sales comparison approach deep dive, and then all those special cases like liquidation, partial release, and vacant land. It's complex.
It really highlights that a VA appraisal report is much more than just a number, isn't it? It's a detailed evaluation packed with specific requirements, all designed to protect everyone involved.
And it leans so heavily on that careful assessment of market value, primarily through those comparable sales.
Absolutely. Hopefully this deep dive gives you, the learner, a really solid footing to understand the layers involved here, whether you're a veteran, a lender, or just curious.
And thinking about all that detail, all those specific rules and requirements, what does that tell you about the VA's commitment, their commitment to responsible lending and really protecting veterans using their home loan benefits? It's definitely something to reflect on.
It truly is. And look, if any of this sparked more questions or you want the absolute finest details, we really encourage you to check out the source itself, VA Pamphlet 26/7 Pamphlet. It's all in there.